You're listening to the Breakpoint Podcast. My name is Wayne Stender, product manager here at Breakpoint, and I'm excited to share with you a special Breakpoint podcast with Maria Baer, who sits down with Ryan Bomberger to discuss what Ryan will be sharing at the upcoming Wilberforce Weekend, May 13th to the 15th in Orlando, Florida. For more information on Wilberforce Weekend, you can visit wilberforceweekend.org. Here's Maria and Ryan.
Well, I am here with Ryan Bomberger. Ryan, I'm so excited to hear from you. Ryan's going to be sharing with us at the Wilberforce Weekend on Saturday afternoon at our third session of the conference. So just by way of reminder, our conference this year, the theme of it is redemption. Sometimes we think about redemption as Christians as a one-time thing. We're saved by Jesus and woohoo, it happened. And to be sure, that is something to celebrate and be thankful for. But we also know as Christians that we're redeemed for a time and a purpose. We're redeemed to and for something as well. And so that's part of what we're going to hear from Ryan about. So before we give you a little sneak peek of what Ryan's going to be sharing with us, Ryan, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about you and about what you do. So I understand you founded the Radiance Foundation. You're also a prolific columnist, writer, speaker. Some of our audience and partners may be familiar with your work, having heard you on World. I know I've heard you on The World and Everything in It before, the podcast, but you've been published all over the place. So tell us a little bit about you and your background and the Radiance Foundation.
Sure. My background is, I guess I started in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, where I grew up with my small little family of 15. I have 6 brothers and 6 sisters, and I was never the quiet one. So I was kind of the middle child. I was the first one adopted, but almost halfway in between. I have 5 younger and 7 older. Out of 13 kids in our family, 10 of us were adopted. And that's why I have a very, very particular perspective on God-given purpose. And especially when you talk about redemption, many of us in our family were rescued from the violence of abortion, including myself. And so I have a very, very specific mindset when it comes to that, when it comes to adoption. So that's my background. And now fast forward all kinds of years. I'm married to the love of my life, Bethany Bomberger, and we co-founded the Radiance Foundation back in 2009. And when we had 2 kids in diapers, we had 3 at the time, but 2 in diapers. We have 4 children now, and we homeschool all of them. And our passion really is to illuminate that every human life, whether you're planned, unplanned, able, disabled, red, yellow, black, brown, or white, whatever the beautiful hue of your skin, every human life has God-given purpose.
And I should point out too, for those of you who are listening and not watching, Ryan is wearing a shirt that has, all I can see is the word life very large on the top there. So I'm sure it says something. What's the whole shirt say? Life has purpose. Ryan, that couldn't be more perfect. I don't know. I know it's a t-shirt, but I think maybe you might need to wear that when you're talking at the Wilberforce Weekend. It's a little too perfect. Is that a Radiance Foundation shirt, or is that something else?
It's one of our many, yes.
That's so cool. I want to talk a little bit more about your family life real quick, just growing up. So you mentioned that you were redeemed, you were brought out of the realities of abortion. Were you adopted as a baby?
I was adopted at 6 weeks. Well, the official adoption was a year later, but I was actually united with my family at 6 weeks of age.
Okay.
And if you look at the paperwork, it's so funny. My parents could have returned me within a year's time if things didn't work out.
Wow.
They don't quite have those parameters today, but I was adopted in 1972. So I'm one of those fringe cases where those who say that they're pro-life are actually advocating for every child, regardless of the circumstances of conception. And I am that fringe case. I'm the 1%, if you will, that is used all the time to justify 100% of abortions. So my birth mom, whom I've never met, but I hope to one day, but she was courageous enough not only to give me life, she gave me the incredible gift of adoption. She experienced the horror and the violence of rape. And so I hope my life is a testament to the fact that the circumstances of our conception never change the condition of our worth.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an incredible story. How old were you, Ryan, when you learned about the circumstances of your adoption?
Oh, the circumstances of my adoption, 13.
Okay.
I didn't fully understand what the word rape meant prior to that. And my parents had thought that they had explained it, but it was I'll describe it as a tense conversation. At the age of 13, I was a handful. I was truly a handful.
No,
But it was in this, no. Now I have 4 children who are a lot like me. Yay.
That's how it works.
But yeah, so it was at that time, because teenage years aren't already tumultuous enough, throw in there basically a rewrite of what I understood to be my storyline, my origin story. And it was devastating.
Sure.
Devastating only to the point that, had I not been loved, I would have, the result would have been radically different. But I was loved so much by my parents, Henry and Andrea Bomberger. But it was devastating to have that rewrite and to fully understand the gravity of why my birth mom chose adoption.
Yeah.
And then I channeled that into a persuasion speech just, I think it was about 2 months later, into a persuasion speech about abortion. And it was the first time I shared my story, and I watched the way that my friends in class reacted, I watched the way my teacher reacted in public school. And I knew that I had a story, and God worked it out that years later I would be able to share the story in so many different ways. But I understood that I had a testimony and I needed to share it. The world needed to hear from people like me who are that living example, that tangible example of how God enables triumph to rise from tragedy all the time.
And what an interesting perspective relating to what you're going to talk about at Wilberforce, because things like adoption or choosing life when abortion is, when you're encouraged to go that route, that could be, we could think of it as a one-time event, a moment in time, right? But your entire life, which God continues to sustain, is a journey, right? That didn't start and end with your mom's courageous decision or your adoptive parents' decision to adopt you. You've had a purpose this whole time, and you're continuing to live into that. So tell us a little bit about what you're going to share with us at that session on Saturday at the Wilberforce Weekend about being redeemed, not just once in a fleeting moment, but for a purpose.
Yeah, I would say it is such a lifetime. You're so right. I mean, it's not just a singular instance. It's something that's generational. And part of what I'm going to share are some of those generational reverberations from my birth mom's singular decision, from being saved eternally myself. I'm going to talk about the adoption of 2 of my children and the stories there that are interwoven. My wife's story of being a single mom, and that powerful story of how God redeemed her life, which had, spiraled out of control. She had walked away from the Lord and finds herself in an unplanned, putting that in quotes, an unplanned pregnancy. So that's part of my story, having adopted my oldest daughter, my youngest son, Justice. We both adopted him, and that incredible story of redemption. And so it's such an amazing thing, this full circle sort of experience, having been adopted and now being an adoptive father. So that will be part of that redemption story.
Sure.
And then also part of what I was redeemed to do is illuminating the truth. And it's what I do through the Radiance Foundation. I consider myself a factivist. There's plenty of activism out there. And one of our slogans is less activism, more factivism. And I try, as a creative who loves the Lord, I try to figure out ways to create messaging that just reveals the dignity of every human life, because we're all created in the image of God, but is also unapologetic in expressing truths and taking really complex things and trying to distill them down to, simple concepts that make sense, that are biblically sound, that are grace-filled. And it's a challenge. And with a touch of sarcasm in there too, because
that's my language.
We need a little bit of that. It needs a little bit of grit, a little bit of edge. But I'm going to talk about some of the things that I do as someone who has been a creative director working in the ad agency world for years.
Okay.
And understand that my purpose is creating messaging, whether in visual form, with design, or in written form with the op-eds that I write. So I love kind of digging into that, and I'm excited for this presentation, this workshop, to actually kind of go into some of those examples.
We're so excited to hear from you. So Ryan, you seem like a person who has a really distinct sense of purpose for your life and your work and your foundation. Was that hard to come by growing up in a family with, I think you said it was something like 1 million other siblings? Is that right?
That's close. Yeah, give or take. It was a large family. What's funny was there were many other families that we knew that we were friends with, other adoptive families that were larger than ours.
No kidding.
But yes, there were definitely a lot in our family.
So was this a thing in Lancaster County? I mean,
it was kind of a thing, and then Lancaster and the neighboring county, York County, there were families that we were part of. It was the Parents Adopting Children's Organization, where we were connected with other families that looked like us. And so although they are not common, I mean, it's not common to have 21 children in your family, for instance. But, well, I guess depends on where you go. But sometimes homeschooling families can be a little larger. But back then, there wasn't a whole lot of homeschooling presence, but it was really neat to actually see these other families who looked like us.
Sure.
And as far as just understanding what my purpose was in such a large family, I felt I understood that. My parents expressed that to me. They knew that I had a special purpose in life, and I held on to that, and I believe that. And they were always encouraging of all the kids in the family to explore the things that God had instilled in us and to discover those things. And I did pursue that. I loved sports. I loved music, and I loved design. Sports gave way after I shattered my ankles. So I was left with the music and the design, which you can do, when you're 60, 70, 80 years old, you can't do football.
Right.
But yeah, I understood from an earlier age, I would even say in middle school, what I loved to do. I loved creating stuff and stuff that mattered. So it just felt, it was like a natural progression to go into college, get my marketing degree with a minor in graphic design, got my master's in communications, and just kept fine tuning those things. Worked in the ad agency world and hated a lot of it, but I didn't understand at the time God was just fine tuning those things so that I could use those for what we do now through the Radiance Foundation.
That's awesome. Yeah. And that's a cool story of redemption too, right? I mean, that the ad industry is notoriously tough.
Yes.
Especially from an ideological perspective. It's extremely competitive. There's a lot of ethical questions that are just inherent in that work, I'm sure. But I'm sure that was something you were able to bring redemption to. And now, you're able to redeem that experience with what you're doing with the Radiance Foundation. So redemption all around, Ryan.
Yes.
I can't wait. We can't wait to hear from you. I'm so thankful that you took some time to spend with us today and give us a little sneak peek. Again, we'll be hearing from Ryan on Saturday afternoon at the Wilberforce Weekend in our third session, talking about redemption and what we are redeemed to and for, what it looks like to live a life of purpose, knowing that we are saved through Jesus. So, Ryan, we're so excited to hear from you. Thanks so much for being here.
Absolutely. God bless. See you soon.
You too.
That was Maria Baer interviewing Ryan Bomberger about his upcoming presentation at the Wilberforce Weekend in Orlando, Florida, May 13th to the 15th. We want to invite you to attend Wilberforce Weekend and also to consider attending our bonus event at the Wilberforce Weekend on preparing for a post-Roe world. Information for both the Wilberforce Weekend and the post-Roe event can be found at wilberforceweekend.org. Again, that's wilberforceweekend.org. Thanks for listening to the Breakpoint Podcast.